Dancing feet inviting you to dance at the Make-Believe Ballroom.
Any mansion or room is the make-believe ballroom. Let's dance, let's dance. It will double my chances. I can see in your glances romance. For while we're swaying and the band is playing, music has its charms. You grow tender, sweetly you surrender in my willing arms. Let's dance, though it's only a small room in a make-believe ballroom. Let's dance, dance, dance. Make-believe ballroom. Let's dance.
Big broadcast, starting out with Dolly Dawn and her Dawn Patrol in 1937, a song written by Walter Bullock and Allie Rubel. Have you forgotten the you and me that used to be? Then the 12th Street Rag, recorded in June 1939 by Lionel Hampton's orchestra, an Ellington front line of Rex Stewart, Lawrence Brown, Harry Carney. Finally, from 1938, yes, it's been confirmed by one who would know, the voice of Martin Block. Mildred Craig with Merle Pitt and the Make Believe Ballroom Orchestra. Make Believe Ballroom. I'm Rich Conaty here every Sunday, 8 to midnight on the big broadcast on WFUV in New York. It is my extreme honor to spend this hour with the king of nostalgia. He has been on TV for over 40 years, even longer on radio, 65 years on the air. Nowadays, you can hear him round the clock at 1130 Bloomberg Radio. His show is called The Business of Show Business. Joe Franklin, the author of 24 books, his first, Classics of the Silent Screen, the most recent one, Joe Franklin's Great Entertainment Trivia Game. Joe Franklin, welcome to the big broadcast.
Oh, what a great build-up. It's so good to hear those old songs, Richie, and to bring back the music, the dreamy music, the romance of our youth. I mean, it's going to live on. I mean, some of the bubblegum music today is kind of forgotten overnight, but these songs will endure in the way you present them on Sunday nights, and I love the way you give the introduction, and at the end you mention what was played. I don't like it when they don't announce what they just played. It drives you buggy. So what did I hear? What was that man's name? So I think you got a great format here. I love it.
Thank you, Joe. Now, one of the questions that I get every now and then, someone will call and ask for 12th Street Rag, and they'll say, but I want you to play the record that Joe Franklin used. What was the record that you used?
It was by Pee Wee Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Who wrote that song? I'm not sure myself. It's, maybe Pee Wee Hunt, I think, wrote that song.
No, it goes back, I want to say, Uday Bowman.
I agree. I will second that emotion. I will affix my signature to that.
Now, that was not your only theme song. You've had other themes throughout the years?
In 1951, when I started on Channel 7, my theme song was I'm Looking Over a Four-Leaf Clover, played by Art Mooney. Remember the name Art Mooney?
Oh, sure.
And then we switched to Al Goodman playing Remember as my second theme song. And then we switched to the one we just heard, 12th Street Rag.
And did you use Memory Lane? You played Memory Lane, right?
On radio. My theme song on radio. I am with you, wandering through memory lane, living the years, laughter and tears, over again.
A little bit later on tonight's big broadcast, we will hear Memory Lane with a vocal from Frank Bessinger. Now, how big? We just heard Martin Block, the Make Believe Ballroom Orchestra, which I'm assuming Merle Pitt had the house band at WNEW in the late 30s.
That's the guy.
How big was Martin Block?
Martin Block was on twice a day, mornings from 10 to 11:30, and nights from about 5:30 until 7. He dominated the ratings. He beat, with that local station, WNW, he beat all the networks, maybe combined. He was totally always sold out. And as you might remember, Rick, I was his record picker. He would say to me, Joe, and I love when he would say to me, Joe, go in the lobby. Bring in Dinah Shore, Joe. Walk in Frank Sinatra. Walk in Harry James. Walk in Vaughn Monroe. Walk in Louis Prima. I was 17 years old, and I was his record chooser. And he would the program started at 10 o'clock. He'd walk in while the theme song was on the air. I used to play the theme song on a 7-day RPM by Glenn Miller, and he would say, Joe, what's the first quarter hour? I would say, we chose a quarter hour of Freddie Martin, and he would just sit down and do the commercial. He'd walk out while the music played. We'd segue back and forth for about 6 or 7 minutes. And I was very honored and thrilled that he leaned on me to totally, single-handedly choose the music for the Make Believe Ballroom. And I was in heaven.
Now, this is intriguing because I knew you'd worked for Martin Block as a record picker. Now, were you picking the current hits? Did you sneak in something a little bit earlier? How did that work exactly?
That's a great question, Rich. I was playing what was of the moment, and one day he said to me, Joe, how would you like to have your own show on WNEW? He got me my own show called Record Collectors Exchange. And he said to me, Joe, please don't compete with me, as if anybody could be. So I decided I'll play old records. And I went out to antique record stores, and I bought records for a penny apiece. I go on the radio that night and say, ladies and gentlemen, here's a record by Al Jolson worth $500. And I go back to the store the next day, pick out 5 records, throw down 5 pennies. The dealer will say, "Come here, kid." I said, "What do you mean, come here, kid? I'm not a kid." He said, "Well, I heard somebody on the radio last night saying these records are worth $500. So I single-handedly created the rare record market, I think it was, So that was the beginning, and I owe everything to Martin Block. He was a great. He died very young. When he died, I did a big 5-hour salute, a big tribute to him on WOR radio, and I think my guest was Cy. Remember Cy Oliver, the great band leader? Cy Oliver?
Sure.
And we had B. Wayne from B. Wayne, Larry Clinton days. It was. I'm so glad you brought his name up. He deserves a little more recognition than he gets. He paved the way for every disc jockey that followed.
And as you mentioned, his show was always sold out. He was a tremendous salesman, and you followed in those footsteps as well, because people still associate you with your sponsors, whether it's Nuco or Martin Paint or Hoffman Soda.
At one time, I had on my desk on TV, Rich, I had 28 items: Castro convertibles, Imperial margarine, Martin Paint, Mighty Fine puddings. It hid my face on there, and I owe it all to Martin Block. And you mentioned about his being sold out. His technique was so different from today. They tell you why you should buy this product, but he did it in reverse. He would say, if you don't buy this pineapple juice or this IJ Fox 4 or this tomato juice, I feel sorry for you. I pity you. He did the commercials in reverse, and it worked. You can't knock it up. It paid the rent, right? It paid. He was the first millionaire disc jockey. And then, as you mentioned, I got the phone call one day from Channel 7 that said, "Joe, we heard you on the radio the other night. We like your voice, and we're considering lighting up in the daytime." There was no daytime TV. It was on the air then from 5 o'clock until sermonette. There was no daytime TV. And they said, "Joe, we give you an hour a day. We're considering lighting up. What kind of a show might you do?" I said, "Well, if I do a show, people talking nose to nose, eyeball to eyeball." They said, "Joe, you're out of your mind. You can't do a talk show on television. You got to give him burlesque skits, pratfalls, baggy pants. Got to give him." So I said, "Well, I apologize for my suggestion, but now rock and roll is just coming." I said, "I do a show of kids dancing to records." I said, "Joe, now we know you're nuts. Who's going to watch kids dance to records? Who comes along? Dick Clark becomes a multi-billionaire." But I defied them, Richard. I did to my knowledge, the first pure, organic, from the bones TV talk show. My first guests were Eddie Cantor, Al Jolson, Rudy Valley, Kate Smith, Sophie Tucker. And I hit the jackpot. And look at it. Every day you read in the paper about a new talk show, right? They come and go. But mine lasted 43 years on Channel 7 and on Channel 9. And I'm pretty proud of that track record.
Oh, gosh, yeah. And we're going to hear a little bit later. We're going to hear from Valley. We're going to hear from Eddie Cantor and Jolson. But right now, I want you to introduce our next record. 2 people that I know, you just mentioned one, were guests on your show. It's Sophie Tucker with the Ted Lewis Band.
Oh, you couldn't have chosen a better one. You know what? Sophie was on my show one day with Ted Lewis. With Ted Lewis on the same panel. So I said, "Sophie, what's happening?" She said, "Oh, Joe, I got so many offers." She said, "They want to make a movie about my life. I got 3 people want to sponsor a radio show. Somebody wants to do a TV show." So, Ted Lewis says, he says, "Don't worry, Sophie. You'll get something soon." Ted Lewis had a great sense of humor.
Here's Some of These Days.
Gonna be so lonely. You'll miss my hugging. You're gonna miss my kissing. You're gonna miss me, honey, when I'm far away. I feel so lonely. So you won't leave, 'cause you know, honey, you've always had your way. Your big fat mama, your mama, some of these days, some of these days, you miss me,
Somebody's waiting for someone to whisper, I love you. If you're in doubt who that someone can be, look in my eyes and you'll see somebody's lonely for someone who's lonely too.
One of Joe Franklin's absolute favorites, Henry Burr, with Roger Wolf Kahn's orchestra recording for Victor in May 1926, Somebody's Lonely. Henry Burr was born in New Brunswick, Canada on January 15, 1882. He died in Chicago. He was working right up until the end in April 1941. We heard Sophie Tucker and Ted Lewis. That's half a panel on Joe's TV show, 1926. Some of These Days, that's taken from Joe's wonderful CD series, The King of Nostalgia, Joe Franklin, which came out right around the time of Joe's book, Up Late with Joe Franklin, one of 24 books to Joe's credit. Joe, we're going to talk about Henry Burr, but before we get to that, now I mentioned about the association with you and your sponsors. You're also one of the most imitated people around.
Well, I think Billy Crystal made me famous. He did me on, he did the Joe Franklin show on Saturday Night Live for 4 years, which I couldn't watch because I'm on the radio against him back in those days on WOR. But when I saw him one night doing me, I says, Billy, one of us is lousy. And he made a good couple of dollars doing me all those years. I like Billy.
And one of the things that I know worked to your favor, because WOR, Channel 9, was a superstation.
Right.
So when your show was airing in New York City, it would be hitting in Los Angeles, what, 8 or 9 o'clock?
Beyond that, I think that I was the first one to be seen on cable. All of a sudden, I was just a local show here on Channel 9, as you mentioned. Then I got mail from Alaska, from Puerto Rico, from Italy, and I realized, I think it was a company called Eastern Microwave. I don't know if they're still in business, but they were the first cable company. And they carried a lot of Channel 9 shows, including mine. I was so flabbergasted to be getting mail from Alaska, where the nights are 6 months long, right? But it was, so I'm a pioneer in several respects. And I always hear people say about people who never appeared on TV. On my show, I had Charlie Chaplin on TV. I had John Wayne, I had Cary Grant, I had Ronald Reagan 5 times, Richard Nixon twice, I had Kate Smith, I had Frank Sinatra twice, I had Bing Crosby twice. Bing, I think, could have been my favorite guest. I always thought of Bing as being what you might call mechanically reproduced. I thought of Bing on radio, on TV, on records, on movies, but when he walked with me flesh and blood that day, Rich, I think I melted. I just melted. I think I did my most favorite show of all time with Bing. And something, a little sideline, he was very unromantic. It's ironic, the most romantic balladeer singer of all times was unromantic in private life. He would tell his songwriters, don't put the word I love you twice in one song. It was so amazing. Bing Crosby would not be so romantic in his songs, but I don't think he'll be forgotten. I think he and Sinatra will not soon be forgotten.
One of the things I remember watching you when I was a youngster,
Which you still are.
being shocked that Darla Hood was all grown up.
Isn't that sad? All those kid stars. I had Dickie Moore, who was grown up, Shirley Temple, when she was all grown up. They warned me. They said, Joe, Shirley Temple is here to talk about penal reform, about women's rights, about air pollution, about being the ambassador to Czechoslovakia, about Girl Scout cookies. You mention her old-time movies, she's going to get up and walk away. She will not talk about her old-time movies. But I said to myself, I love her old-time movies. And I did 90 minutes face-to-face about her old-time movies, and she loved it. Didn't walk away. You got to be a little bit defiant, I think. She went back to California. She sent me one of her old-time scrapbooks, which is, beyond value. So I think my advice to talk shows, be a little bit defiant. Don't listen to what they tell you. Do what you want to do yourself, But I don't know how I got into that. I apologize.
No, years ago when I interviewed Cab Calloway at his home, his manager gave me a whole list of do's and don'ts.
Yes.
Don't ask him how he got started, all this stuff. But once he felt comfortable with me, and it was probably the same thing with Shirley Temple, once they know you're okay and that you're on their side, then they'll just open up. And Cab did the same thing. He talked about his sister Blanche. He talked about being in the Big Broad. He talked about how much he loved Bing.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
I had Jane Wyman on. They said, Joe, don't mention Ronald Reagan. They had a very unhappy divorce. But I loved Ronald Reagan. I did 90 minutes on Ronald Reagan. She didn't walk away. So I agree. Cab Calloway, Ronald Reagan, Jane Wyman. It's Shirley Temple. It's you gotta don't be afraid.
Yep. Well, let's go back. I'm just fascinated by the affection that you have for Henry Burr. How did that come about, and what makes him so special when there were so many wonderful singers in that turn of the century era?
When I need relaxation in my home and my office, I turn on my Henry Burr records. There's something about his voice. I just hope somebody makes a big movie or a big documentary on his life someday. He was born Harry McClaskey, and he got the name Henry Burr from his vocal coach. Her name was Burr. Henry Burr made more records than any man that ever lived, maybe as many as 25,000, 30,000 records. He was the top recording star of all time. And the voice to me was so soothing, so lovely. And a couple of his classics like I Wonder Where My Baby Is Tonight and Memories of France. And there was never a more soothing voice in those last. He died at about the age of 56. He was so young. And I love that. I wish more people would get to know. I think after tonight, more people would know that name, right? I got that feeling.
Well, we were talking on the drive up, and I didn't realize that he was on the radio even to the end on the National Barn Dance.
On the Alka-Seltzer National Barn Dance every Saturday night at 9 o'clock, and they would say, "Here he is, my friend Joe Kelly." The MC was named Joe Kelly. He would say, "Here he is, my friends, the Dean of Ballad Singers, Henry Burr." And the audience would applaud like mad, and he would sing "Can't You Hear Me Calling Caroline" or "When Summer Is Gone," and it was just beyond goose pimply. The voice was a certain timbre, a certain sound, a certain romantic, melodic voice that nobody ever had that tone. And we just heard Somebody's Lonely. You could just feel it, that little vocal chorus, how great that sound was.
Well, we've got up next on the turntable, which is actually a CD, but let's romanticize it.
I won't tell.
Okay. A mutual friend, someone that was a guest many times on your show, and that's the street singer Arthur Tracy.
Arthur Tracy, the street sweeper. Oh, the street singer. He was a very dear friend. He was not the most generous man in the world. I was writing a book once. I needed some photographs. So I called him, and he sent me a tissue paper, a picture of him on tissue paper, not a real 8x10 photograph. No, but I loved him. He was a very dear friend, and in fact, I got him his last job in a touring production of a show called Social Security. He was then about 96 or 97, 98 years old. That was his last job, and I loved Arthur Tracy, the street singer. And whatever we do to keep that name alive will be much appreciated.
Well, let's listen to the street singer in April 1933, an Ali Rubel song, Gypsy Fiddles.
a gypsy caravan came to rest beneath a starry sky. In the gypsy fire's gleam, we were living in a dream. We were happy then, dear, you and I. Gypsy fiddles were playing, and the moon was calling above. Gypsy fiddles were playing, 'twas a night of love. In my arms you were swaying to a song of music divine. Gypsy fiddles were playing, you were mine, all mine. Then and there you kissed me so tenderly. Tenderly you gave me your vows. I remember you saying, it is you I'll always adore. Gypsy fiddles were playing, but they play no more. I remember you saying, it is you I'll always adore. Gypsy fiddles were playing, but they play no more.
Greaser's Orchestra as the Broadway Bandits in 1933. Harriet Lee, the vocalist, You're Gonna Lose Your Gal, written by Joe Young and James Monaco. James Monaco was born 129 years ago tomorrow. He died in October 1945. Our mutual friend Arthur Tracy, the street singer in 1933, Gypsy Fiddles, on the big broadcast Sundays 8 to midnight on WFUV in New York. My guest in this hour is the king of nostalgia, Joe Franklin, a voice, a presence that we all grew up with. He can be heard nowadays, and it airs round the clock on Bloomberg, right?
Oh, yeah, this week I'm chatting with Cyndi Lauper, with Olivia Newton-John, with Neil Sedaka, with Shirley Jones, a whole bunch. We get good people, but I want you to be my guest one day.
I'd love it. The business of show business, right. You can hear Joe Franklin. You've basically never been off the air in 65 years.
Never took 1 week off. No vacations. If I gave you a list of things I've never done, you'd cry. I never drove a car. I mean, when I was a kid, maybe. I never had a license. I never went to a beach. I never had my feet in the sand, per se. Never in my life ever went to a beach. Never played cards. Never had a credit card. I got 20 things I've never done. I just was on the air day and night. I was on TV 3 times a day. I created the late night genre. There were no late night TV shows until mine. So I guess it's, you mentioned about my last book sold 75,000 copies, and they're all in my house. They're all in my house. No, it's I've had a pretty busy life. I'm not going to quit till I get it right. I still do lectures at colleges, and I was at a nursing home about 2 weeks ago, and I see a man in the front row sleeping. So I said to his wife, "What's the matter over there?" She says, my husband's asleep. I said, "Well, if he's asleep, wake him up." She said to me, "No, you wake him up. You put him to sleep." So they're pretty sharp, some of those old-time people, right?
Now, I know, is it fair to say that you're more, and maybe it isn't even fair to group them together, you're more an Eddie Cantor guy than a Jolson guy?
That's a great point. I go equally. They're both... Eddie, people forget Eddie Cantor in his heyday was #1 in the world. #1 on radio with the old Chase and Sanborn Hour. In those days, there were 100 million people in this country. 90 million of them listened to him every Sunday night. 90 million out of 100 million listened to Eddie Cantor on Sunday nights. And he dominated the movie screen. They would wait around the block, around the clock at Radio City. So he had the Kid from Spain and Roman Scandals and all those. And he was #1 recording star. And Jolson, of course. Jolson was... He died as much a casualty of the Korean conflict or the Korean War as any fighting man. He sang his heart out, and he came back at the age of 64. He died of a heart attack at the age of 64. Jolson did. So, and I was lucky enough to be connected with the movie, The Jolson Story, with Larry Parks. I contributed some song titles and ideas, and I never had Jolson on my show because he died 1 year before I began in TV. It was nice, but I had dinner with him a couple of times, and he was great. I mean, he was known as the world's greatest entertainer, and you've seen that on the record labels,
sure.
Right? And I think that carries on. So between Jolson and Cantor, they were my mentors. And I wrote the Eddie Cantor show called Eddie Cantor Show Business for many years. It was me sending him some old records, and he would tell anecdotes. I wrote the material, the anecdotal material as well. So I was very close. I think of Jolson and Cantor. There's a man named Georgie Jessup. Remember Georgie Jessup?
Oh, sure.
I liked him too. He was a dear friend. He made toward the end. He made his whole living doing eulogies. He would do the exact same speech. Every eulogy he would say, "Oh, my dearest friend, my beloved friend, my childhood friend, I'm going to miss this man." One day the coffin was a little bit open. He said, "Oh my God, I knew this man." Talk about hypocrisy, right?
Now, unfortunately, I mean, there's a guy that couldn't get a break, Jessel, and although he was a Broadway star, movie producer,
in his heyday, right?
But he passed on The Jazz Singer, and I think he only made one record in the 1920s, When the Curtain Goes Down.
And My Mother's Eyes.
So he wasn't in the recording studio. You know, it's funny you mentioned about how huge Cantor was on radio. People don't realize how huge Rudy Valley was on the radio.
Rudy Valley was #1. He gave the first exposure to Victor Borge, to everybody, Burns and Allen, and he was a dear friend of mine. I used to live in his house in California when I went out there, and he wanted to play Patton in the movie. He wrote a letter to Darryl Zanuck begging to cast him as Patton. I think that who did the part again? George Scott did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
But Rudy Valley was in his heyday was #1. He was like everybody combined in popularity.
Yeah.
He really was.
Well, in a little while, we're going to hear Crosby, Colombo, and Valley. But first, those two favorites of yours, we're going to hear Eddie Cantor in 1921. We're going to hear Jolson in 1913 with a song written by Joseph McCarthy and James Monaco.
I've been worried all day long, don't know if I'm right or wrong. I can't help just what I say, for your love made me this way. Oh, why do I feel blue? There were times when I'd laugh at you, but now I'm crying, no use denying, there's no other girl will do. You made me love you. I didn't think you'd do it. I didn't think you'd do it. You made me want you. All the time you knew it. All the time you knew it. You made me happy sometimes. You made me glad. But there were times, dear, oh, I felt so bad. You made me sigh for, I didn't want to tell you, I didn't want to tell you, some love from you. That's true, you know what you need to do, yes I do. Give me what I cry for. You know you got friend kisses that I die for. You know you made me love you. You made me love you. I didn't think to do it. I didn't think to do it. You made me want you. All the time you knew it. Just all the time you knew it. You made me happy sometimes. You made me glad, but there were times, dearie, oh, I felt so bad. You made me sigh for, I didn't want to tell you, I didn't want to tell you, some love from you. That's true, you know what you need to do, yes I do. Give me what I cry for. You know you got the brand of kisses that I die for. You know you made me love you.
always thought that I'd prefer single blessedness. I thought that I'd like to stay free. Well, I was a young fellow, and I never thought my time would come to marry. No wedding bells for me. But I've changed my mind after all. You are the one made me fall. Or I never knew I could love anybody, honey, like I'm loving you. I couldn't realize what a pair of eyes and the baby's smile could do. I can't sleep, I can't eat, I never knew a single soul could be so sweet. I never knew I could love anybody, honey, like I'm loving you. Why, I used to smile at all the songs that were popular. Nothing but love in each song. Why, listen, I used to think those kind of songs were kind of foolish. But now I admit I'm wrong. I never knew a single soul could be so sweet. I never knew I could love anybody, honey, like I'm loving you.
Big broadcast Sundays on WFUV New York. We began with Al Jolson in 1913 with a James Monaco song, You Made Me Love You. And Eddie Cantor in 1921 with a Ted Fiorito composition, I Never Knew I Could Love Anybody, Honey, Like I'm Loving You.
Eddie was that ray of sunshine that we needed during the Depression time. Everything was so gloomy, and they were singing, Brother, Can You Spare a Dime? And millionaires were selling apples on street corners. But when he came on the radio with that great smile, that infectious grin, that cheerfulness, he was the right man at the right time, right?
And we were talking before about people who were star makers. We talked about Rudy Valley, Eddie Cantor all the way up until Eddie Fisher. But you've got quite a list yourself. I just started writing down. I got Barbra Streisand, Dustin Hoffman, Bill Cosby. You gave a first break to an awful lot of people.
Al Pacino. I would say I gave the first break to maybe 50s who became superstars. And it's gratifying. And many of them acknowledge it. Many of them don't acknowledge it. They see me on the street. They walk on the other side. They figure, they don't want to be reminded of the days when they were broke. So I symbolize, I sort of represent the times they were broke. They don't want to be reminded. But most of them... Now, Bill Cosby, you just met. Bill Cosby is the greatest man. Every time he's got a new book or a record album, he comes on my show. He said, Joe, I'm not going to forget the days when I was young, breaking in at Basin Street East when you put me on the TV show or the radio show. So some of them are not. Bill Cosby, I'm glad we can make this little point that Bill is a beautiful, great, appreciative man, or the best appreciative man I know.
I think the first time, maybe that I even heard of Russ Columbo, was on your television show because you were playing one of those shorts. I think it was where he played twins, a dual identity.
I think it was called That Goes Double. That Goes Double. What a memory, huh?
Old time movie time.
Right.
I mean, because as it was always great to see who you had on your panel, but when you would run those old films, in fact, I watched a show the other day on DVD where you were talking about the Lee DeForest phono films, and you played the Cecil and Blake, the Ben Burney Band.
And Billy Crystal said on my show that his first acting lesson was pretending to be sick so he could stay home and watch the Joe Franklin show. And when I played those comedies by Charlie Chase and Laurel and Hardy and Charlie Chaplin, he decided he wants to be a comedian just from watching them on the Joe Franklin. So that made me feel nice.
And nobody was playing those.
Nobody in the world. I had a show called Real Camp on Channel 5. We used to play Leon Errol and remember Edgar Kennedy, Slowburn Kennedy. So I pioneered in that field, and I think nostalgia is here to stay.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's time for the Battle of the Baritones. We're going to hear Russ Columbo and a song written by Seymour Simons and Gerald Marks, who was a songwriter that you may have known. Cause
All of Me.
Yeah, we're going to hear Columbo's All of Me, and then we're going to hear again one of your most beloved guests, Bing Crosby. Let's start with Russ Columbo, 1931, All of Me.
Bravo.
Why not take all of me? Can't you see I'm no good without you? Take my lips, I want to lose them. Or take my arms, I'll never use them. Your goodbye left me with eyes that cry. How can I go on, dear, without
took the part that once was my heart, so why not take all of me? You took my kisses and you took my love. You taught me how to care. Am I to be just the remnant of a one-sided love affair? All you took I gladly gave. There's nothing left for me to say. La da 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 ma ba ba ma da da la la da da la da la la. Take my arms, I'll never use them. Your goodbye left me with eyes that cry. How can I go on, dear, without you? You took the part that once was my heart, but why not take all of me? All the world loves a lover, but a lover doesn't always love love. For some it's very bad, makes them very sad. For some it's like a blessing from above. Love, you funny thing, look at what you did to me. Love, you funny thing, you haven't any sympathy. First, you come and bring happiness into my heart. Then, you funny thing, you go and tear it right apart. My life was just a heaven below. Someone made it seem that way. Then, for no reason, she let me go. Do you call that fair play? I'm just wondering what the end is gonna be. Love, you funny thing, won't you bring her back to me? Come and you bring happiness into my heart. Then, you funny thing, you go and tear it right apart. My life was just a heaven below. Someone made it seem that way. Then, for no reason, she let me go. Do you call that fair play? I'm just wondering what the end is gonna be. Love, you funny thing, won't you bring her back to me?
Couple of crooners on the big broadcast. Russ Columbo in 1931 with the Seymour Simons, Gerald Marks Standard, All of Me, and Bing, 1932, Turk and Allert, Love You Funny Thing. Coming up, Valley, because you can't have Crosby and Columbo without Valley. Joe Franklin has been my guest in this hour, and I remember very fondly the shows that you did with Bing right around the time he was at the Uris Theater.
That's right. He was on with his wife.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of showing off. He was normally very aloof, very cold, very icy. But that day he was so peppy and feisty and sassy. I guess he was showing off to Catherine Crosby, right? And they were a beautiful couple.
But he had you were throwing songs out to him. He was singing bits of songs.
Got all the words wrong. He made all those multi-million selling records. He got all the words wrong. He gave us a lot of his philosophy. I would always ask my guests for some of their philosophy. I would always ask him for some little maxim, something inspirational. Bob Hope once said, if you're bald in the front, that means you're a thinker. If you're bald in the back, that means you're a lover. If you're bald in the front and the back, that means you think you're a lover. And Al Jolson once on, not on my show, but on another show I was listening to, he says, here's what wives and sweethearts, but they never meet. It was funny. And, I'll wind up with Eddie Cantor's slogan. He said on my show, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. And Rich, you are nice. You're a fantastic interviewer, and you pay attention, and you look at the guest's eyes, look at their belly button.
Joe, it's an absolute joy. I'd love you here every week. I know that people can hear you 24/7 on Bloomberg, the business of show business, 1130 on the AM dial. You've got a date coming up before too long at the Metropolitan Room?
Yeah, I appeared there about a month ago when we broke the attendance record. A lot of people couldn't get in, but I'll do it again in the spring, and we'll do a Joe Franklin show. But meanwhile, Rich, again, I want to say I've enjoyed this, and brings back the good old days, DAZE, good old days, right, that will not soon be forgotten.
Thank you, Joe Franklin. We're going to end with a selection from the Big Broadcast Volume 9, Rudy Valley, his Connecticut Yankees, December 1928, a song from the Eddie Cantor show, Whoopee.
Oh, yeah.
And Rudy Valley, of course, unlike Bing, Rudy did have some success on Broadway.
There was a show that opened called Roberta, and the critics killed it. But he sang a certain song that he liked in that show called Smoke Gets in Your Eyes about 6 weeks in a row, and he made that show single-handedly into a smash just by the power of one song on the Rudy Valley radio show. So it shows you how popular Rudy Valley was in those days, right?
So from Crosby and Columbo, we wrap up with Rudy Valley and Come West Little Girl.
Look in my baby's eyes, come west, little girl, come west. The breeze will blow, the stars will peep, but I'm too lonesome to go to sleep. Come west, little girl, come west. Oh, don't be piney. we've been parted, my love has increased. I love the West, it's full of charms, but I rest best in my baby's arms. Come west, little girl, come west.
It's WFUV and WFUV HD, New York. Listener-supported public media from Fordham, the Jesuit University of New York. Music discovery starts here.